Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Sorry.
been advised to repeat the procedures.
Oh, okay.
We are live now. My apologies.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City Commission Electric Utility meeting of.
Been advised to repeat the procedures.
Oh, okay.
We are live now. My apologies.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City Commission Electric Utility meeting of.
Been advised to repeat the procedures.
Oh, okay. All right, just tell me when to go.
Go ahead now, Madam.
All right, let's give it another try. Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to the Tuesday, January 25th meeting of the Electric Utility of the City Commission of Lake Worth Beach, Florida. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Mayor Betty Resch.
Here.
Vice Mayor Herman Robinson is absent. Commissioner Sarah Maliga.
Here.
Commissioner Christopher McVoy.
Here.
Commissioner Kimberly Stokes.
Here. Thank you very much. And once again, we are going to have flag salute by Commissioner Maliga. See if we can get the time.
Ready? Here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, are there any additions, deletions, or reordering of the agenda?
I have none, Madam Mayor.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Commissioner Maliga, did you vote?
Yes, aye.
Okay, thank you.
Did you hear me?
Since there's a few of us up here, I just want to make sure we actually have enough votes going on. Madam Clerk, are there any public comments been submitted?
I have none.
Okay, and the consent agenda, no one's gonna consent agenda? Okay, great. So,
Minutes, I think.
yes, that's next. I'm doing minute. That's next on my list, right here.
Okay.
Okay. I'm okay. Next is the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion? Do
Motion.
I have would you second the motion?
I would say.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, we've made it to the second page. The first item on new business is item A. Mr. Liberty.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners. With respect to item A, which is the first amendment to the Davy Tree contract. Davy Tree does our vegetation management for us, which includes not only trimming trees and vegetation, but clearing up the alleyways and the mowing. This is a multi-year contract. It was a single bidder. What we're doing is we're extending for one more year using newly received rates. And then we will go out for a bid during the next year and rebid the whole contract. Hopefully there will be more participation in the first.
So there was only one bid when this, how long have they had the contract since?
I believe it's the third year. We're going into the fourth year, which would be.
I have a question. What sort of oversight do we have on the trimming that they do? Because I've heard numerous concerns and seen a few rather rough trims. So do we have any oversight to that at all? How does that work?
Absolutely, we do. We have a standard that they trim to, which is typical in the industry. It's pretty much the same, city to city, utility to utility. In addition to that, we do have supervision that watches what they do. And they also have arborists on their staff as well. So they're not just a bunch of people using chainsaws and bowl saws. They are actually working in the direction of their own arborists.
Okay, because there have been a couple times where it's been pretty bare, but I will take your word for it that you're gonna.
It can be. We are trimming to industry clearances, and if the trees have grown too close, we actually have to trim them back. One of the things that we've done over the last few years is we've increased the frequency. We're trying to get to a 3-year cycle on our major feeders and portions of our system, as opposed to 4, 5, and 6 years, which leads to a lot of outages. So we're greatly increasing the cycles that we're trying to complete. So
okay, I have one more question. You're trimming trees that are the tree itself might be on private property, but it's getting close to the wires, or does it have to be on public property?
Generally speaking, we are trimming the trees that interfere with our main lines. We do not trim the trees, or should not be trimming trees that are around customers' service lines.
Okay,
So from the pole to the home, other than about a 4 or 5 or 6 foot radius from the pole,
uh-huh.
is the responsibility of the homeowner.
And they should call an arborist and have
They should
someone,
call their own arborist and do that. That's
and have their electricity cut off that day, maybe?
If they, we will gladly turn it off for free. We will send a crew out there, remove the wires, and then put them back up. We'd rather do it for free than have them try to cut the corner and do it without
Exactly.
calling us.
Thank you, that's really
No
helpful.
charge, and then we send a crew.
Thank you so much, appreciate it. Do I have a motion?
So moved, and
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
if I might just put in a comment, I'm probably known as a tree guy.
Yes, that's one of the things you know.
Right, known as, and I would say that I am very sympathetic with the challenges that
Yeah.
that Ed has. Stuff grows fast here,
Oh,
trees and electric lines is not a good combination. And
especially in the.
sometimes they do have to trim and it's not very elegant looking, but it does have a real reason.
Yeah.
So, you know. it's
Oh,
one of those
I'm
things
not
that
being
would-
really critical. It was a question, and I
No,
also
no, I,
asked a couple questions to help the public understand some of the stuff that,
Exactly.
because we have all the secret information apparently.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Boy, those comments are very helpful. I think I'll also point out too, for many people, it's not up to the public to distinguish which wires are which, but typically the lower wires on the pole are communication wires.
Oh, okay,
And we have no responsibility for trimming from the communication wires. Our responsibility is to keep the wires that keep the power up high, free and clear. But often we'll get calls that come and trim if the customers are concerned because they see
a wire.
vegetation into the wire. And we go out and take a look at it, and many times it's not ours, it's Comcast. Or
So they call Comcast then, or do they call their arborist?
ideally, they should call Comcast or AT&T and have them come and deal with it. But the communication companies don't like to do a lot of vegetation management themselves.
Right, sure.
Other than the books and, you know, during storms, they could bring their stuff down, but
Right.
they don't trim like we do because they don't have the safety concerns with
Thank you.
different voltages.
We had a vote? Different, yes, different voltages. Okay, moving along to item number B. New business, which is the First Amendment to Task Order 3 with Power Engineers to complete additional engineering design for the new 138 kV canal switchyard.
Correct.
Liberty, once again.
This item is for our new canal station, which is on the western side of the city to replace the existing canal switching station. Power Engineers is the engineering firm that's been retained to do the design of that new 138 kV station. This is additional work that had to be done, work that you come across as you get further and further into design. We submit our permanent applications to the Water Management District or various other groups. They come back with comments. They want different shrubbery, they want greater setbacks and different driveway entrances, different paths. There's also work in here for additional lightning protection studies. One of the things that we're doing is we're replacing the overhead static wire, which goes pole to pole. And that static wire will also include fiber for communications inside that. So there's additional lightning protection associated with that. So this is things that are not always foreseen when you issue the first contract, but there are design changes that come along the way. So this will cover those changes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next one is,
well, we don't have to
I was
vote on
just,
it.
thank you, thank you for reminding me. It's the COVID. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much. Now we are going to C, which is First Amendment with Precast Specialties LLC. And Mr. Liberty, you're up again.
This is the portion of our system that's related to system hardening, reliability improvement. It's changes to our distribution system. So we are using a combination of wood poles, concrete poles, and steel poles, depending on the location and the application. For example, we use a wood pole in an area where we have to climb, but we don't have direct access. In some places, we can use a concrete pole, other places we can use a steel pole. There are many places where we can use concrete, and this allows us to go ahead and buy some more concrete poles to keep that program going.
Great, thank you. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I do have
Yes.
one question.
Sure.
What do we do with the wood poles when those are taken out?
What do we do with the wooden poles when they're taken out?
Good question. Those are recycled. They are not disposed of directly because they're treated with chemicals,
See you, so.
which would be creosote or penta, And in some cases, they may have had a bug treatment inserted into the base of the pole over the years to prevent termite damage to the poles. So we treat those as not an ordinary waste. We don't throw them in normal garbage. We have a recycling contract. They come and take these poles away. They're not put into regular dumpsters.
We're not taking them down to the bonfire at the beach and lighting them up.
No, absolutely.
Good to know. Just want to put that out there, everybody.
And they should not be used as bulkheads around your backyard or a playground or anything like that. They need to be taken care of.
Really not around the backyard either?
No. We're not using that.
Okay, fine. Okay, did we vote? Yes, we did. All right, now we are on item D, which is amending the interconnection rules for the net metering program. Mr. Liberty, you are once again up.
Okay, we'll go back through a little bit of history. We currently have a cap on the maximum kilowatt of solar systems that can be installed in our system at 1.5% of our peak. And that cap was put in place for technical reasons and currently remains in place. A couple of months ago, we actually learned of a situation where a customer was installing a system and had not been in contact with us. It was outside of the city. We found out that they were installing the system and we looked into what they were doing. And it became evident to us that they had a device, which is a power limiting device, which limited the amount of power that could be exported from their system into our grid. We looked at that further and realized that if such a device does in fact exist, and it appears that it does, and it does work, that there'd be no reason to prevent customers from installing systems so long as they had this device. So the cap would not apply to customers who would install this power export limiting device. This would limit the ability of their system to export power to the grid, yet the home or the business would still be connected to the grid and enjoy the benefits of grid connection, but would not be able to export to the grid.
And who is that an advantage for?
It's an advantage for the customer in that they're not subject to our cap when they install one of these. And that's what we're proposing. When we learned of this, we said, hey, this does not cause a problem on our system.
Okay,
Let's not hold them up from going solar. As long as they install such a device, customers can go ahead and not be worried about the cap. We would anticipate, though, that once we remove the cap, we anticipate that day when we get the second tie line in service,
right.
that customers who have these devices could in fact then remove them and be free to export according to our normal interconnection rules. So this we saw as a way to allow customers that have solar right now, even though there's a cap in place. If you don't use one of these devices, you would be subject to the cap. But if you install this device, you could of course go forward and install.
And so it limits the amount of energy that goes back into our system. So
Right.
that kind of helps the up and down issue.
Correct. We were worried about the swings and
Right.
the fluctuations of our system as evidenced by the output of our own system, which can swing pretty significantly in very narrow bandwidths of time, 5-minute, 10-minute intervals.
Okay,
That's why for technical reasons, we put a cap in place because of
that,
our concern during island operations.
okay. One more question. Do you have any idea, are these devices available and how much do they cost?
Apparently, they are readily available. I'm not completely familiar with the cost. I believe it's a few $100s, but I'm not 100% sure.
But this would be for somebody that's already installing rooftop panels, so they're doing an expenditure anyway.
Correct. They could incorporate this in their design, as this one customer that we discovered was doing. It was actually pretty good idea, innovative, and it turns out it's going to solve a problem for a bunch of customers.
Great.
But what it doesn't solve, though, is the need long-term to remove the cap completely.
Right.
So once we have the second Thailand in service, it's our suggestion, we'll be back to you at that time to say, let's remove the cap.
And that's going to be 2024.
We originally had plans for 2022. We've been informed by FPL that it's more likely to be closer to the end of 2023 because of delays that they've encountered.
Okay, great.
However, we're moving ahead with our construction process rather than just saying, well, we'll wait another year.
Sure.
We want to make sure that we're ready when they're ready.
Thank you. Thank you.
But this is something that we all want to see remove the cap completely. So we view this as an intermediary step
Great.
to allow customers who want to go solar now and say, well, you don't have to wait.
Mhm.
You can install this now. When we remove the cap, we expect to come back and say, by the way, you can now remove these devices.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner McBoyd.
Yes, when I first looked at this resolution, I thought, great. We're finally removing a cap that many people in the city cap or moratorium on rooftop solar that many people in the city have been quite frustrated with, particularly because there have been federal tax credits and things that were declining and people were missing out on them. And so I thought, great, we're removing the cap, and that's a great thing, until I looked in the fine print. And I did some research on power export and limiting devices. They're not very common. It's not an industry standard sort of a thing. It's showing up some, but it is not a standard common thing. If one looks at the rules, and I believe it is page 3 of our rules and regulations, it's highlighted in yellow in your backup. You will see in there a sentence, I believe it's the second one in that paragraph. The PAL device must regulate, blah, 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 blah. Does not exceed the electric needs of the parcel at the time the electric, and I should say electricity is produced. And the PAL device must ensure a zero export of electricity back to the city's electric system. So let's think about that a little bit. Almost everybody who chooses to do rooftop solar does it where they're looking to have a net zero situation over the course of the year. They know that they don't produce electricity at night. They know that they use electricity from the grid at night. They know that they do produce it during the day. And the idea is you size your system in accordance with what your usage is so that you're ballpark putting as much back in as you're taking out. That's part of the economic incentive for doing rooftop solar. What this says is, sorry, Lake Worth Utilities, which you as a resident of Lake Worth and a customer's utility is a owner in, are not allowed to give us any electricity back to the grid. As soon as as your panels are generating, your inverter is generating more than what you're using at that time, not yesterday, not in the evening, at that time, meaning the middle of the day when you're producing, and you might be able to get ahead of your evening use, we're not interested. We're going to shut you off. What that does is it removes a big chunk of the economic incentive for people to do it. So when we think we're removing a cap, in fact, when I checked around with people who are involved in solar installing, they were astounded and said, well, nobody's going to do it.
That
Under
was
those
my question.
It doesn't make any sense.
Who would actually participate in this? Because most people that participate in this they use our grid like a battery, right, for storage. So they produce a lot during the day. We kind of take the extras and then we give it back to them at night. That's a summary of all that stuff you just said, I think.
Yeah.
And that's the way I'm seeing it. They kind of just use us as that storage. And what we're saying here is you're not allowed to overproduce during the day. So when they're designing their whole system, while this cap's in place for 2 years, they need to design a system now with this, this limiting device on it now, but then in 2 years, they'll probably want to take that limiting device off. So why would you do it now? I guess is my question. I don't know the particulars of it, but it seems like something where you'd be investing a lot of money in something today.
That doesn't make
That
sense
doesn't
on the pipe.
Well, let me ask you a
really
question.
want to.
And if I can go a little bit more, because this is a fairly technical issue. There are other downsides to this for the system owner, person that's installing it. When you put a cutoff like that, it's not so easy to do a cutoff that's variable, because what it's got to be doing is watching your usage in the house and cut off at exactly that amount. That's quite different than saying, okay, you can put in a 10 kilowatt system, we're going to cut you off every time when you use 9.5 or above. That's relatively straightforward to do. Variable ones is not so easy. When you put that in, your system now is not giving you feedback on how the system is performing because you're cutting off a chunk of it. That's not helpful for keeping track of system performance. But the big one is it's loss of revenue to the residents. And we already have, when somebody comes in and makes an application to interconnect to our grid, we already have a limit in place. It's the 10 kilowatt limit. And so it does not make sense to add another one on top. what would make sense and what would be a good direction for us to be going is to be smartening up our grid so that we have demand response communications, which are already built in, that capability, into all inverters that are for sale now. It's called Rule 21, that says we can control remotely your usage. And why has that been put in? It's been in place since 2015 or earlier in Australia and New Zealand. It was a massive change to the inverter industry there, because they said we need to have that control so that when people move eventually to battery-based systems, those people are now contributing generators to our system. But we need to be able to dispatch that energy the same way that we're called upon to dispatch energy by some of the bigger guys that we're connected into the grid. That capability is already in any inverters that are being installed at this point. So what we should be doing, instead of putting a brute force regulator that just throws away energy, we should be moving toward, and it can be part of a demand response system, but it's a communication system in the grid that lets us adjust whatever needs we have to okay, there's too much juice coming in on A Street, let's tone them down a little bit, or there's not enough, let's bring on some of their battery. We know that electric vehicle charging things is going to take off like mad. So we want to be able to be looking forward to that. We know that battery prices are coming down. People already are installing battery backup systems. That means their systems can be an enhancement to our grid. This is not actually lifting the cap, and it's not moving us in the right direction of a smart grid and maximizing both benefit to consumers and environmental benefit with renewable energy. So I have a big concern with it.
Mr. Liberty, I have a question. Thank you. If someone does this and has the device put in, when we do get to the point where you feel more comfortable, letting that change happen, can those devices be removed?
Absolutely. So we saw this as a short-term measure because we know of at least one customer. That's how we learned of this device and said, hey, there may be other customers who want to do this. Let's remove this impediment and at least allow them to do that. The overall cap, that's a different discussion that we've now had multiple times.
Right.
But we said, hey, this is better than doing nothing until the cap is removed completely. So there may be customers that want to go ahead right now, install this device and get on solar to get the benefits of carbon-free energy in their home.
And my understanding is people that are interested in installing solar panels, that they're that interested that they're willing to make that investment. The overriding reason for that is to use renewable resources, not to make what profit are we talking about?
The capital cost.
No, how much are you saying if I do it and I have the limit on it, which means I can't sell the electricity back? How much are we talking lost profit, lost income?
I'm not a solar installer.
Well,
so
but I
can't
mean,
give
that's
you
an
those
important
numbers
question.
off
If we're
the top of
talking
my head.
about,
But they're
Look,
significant.
well, I don't know what significant means. Significant means different things to different people. I mean, if it's $10,
So let me, having been a consultant in the area of solar for some time,
right,
let's assume for the moment that there were no caps, right? And you had a system that was designed to be net metered to a net zero at the end of the year. That might come out to, in a typical home, somewhere between 5 to maybe 10 kW in that range for the home sizes that we have here in the city. And the customers are probably investing at about $3 a watt to put these systems up. So the 10 kW system, a customer might spend about $30,000 to install such a system. If you install one of these devices right now, if you wanted to install that today, you couldn't because we have a cap. We have 165 customers with solar today on rooftops, and we're about 1.44 megawatts or so, 1.5% of our peak. So a customer could not install the system. If they had one of these devices, it would probably limit the size of their system to something below 10 kW or 5 or 8 kW. It would be smaller, but they could still have a system. They could, at a point in time later on, when we lift the cap completely, once we have the second timeline, they could come back and then add more panels and increase the size of the system and enjoy additional benefits at that time. So what this does, it allows them to get started to install their benefit with their inverters and get going. We viewed this as something that we were bringing to the market and say, hey, rather than wait 2 years to do the bigger system. If you want to do something right now, this is something you can do right now. Removing the cap completely is a separate discussion and that cap was put in place purely for technical reasons. That's a separate discussion. If you want to have that, we can have that. But this was a way of allowing customers to install something right now and not hold them back.
Okay,
And we know that there was at least one customer who wanted to do that. So we're saying, hey, there's one, there might be more. Let's get out of the way.
okay. I just want the record to reflect that Vice Mayor Herman Robinson came in.
I apologize.
Oh, good to see you. I think what is before us is passing or not passing this resolution, this item. So, and I
Madam
mean,
Mayor, may,
what?
hello, can I speak?
Yeah, we can barely hear. Come closer to the microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, we can.
Okay, I just want to say thank you to Ed Liberty and his team for trying to find a solution in the meantime, right? I think that it shows outside thinking. I think it shows great fortitude. And I just want to, give staff my sincere thanks for at least bringing this to us at this time while we're still at this cap and still waiting for our second timeline. So I personally want to thank you and thank your staff, Mr. Liberty, for bringing this forward.
I do have a question,
Okay.
like a very, very simple one.
That's what they'll say.
And I hope I don't, well, so what's the point of connecting to our grid? This is what I'm trying to grapple with, because my basic understanding is I have solar panels and I connect to the grid so I can feed energy back into the grid. And then I can get energy back at a later time. So if I can't feed any energy back into the grid at all, according to this, maybe I'm wrong in that. That's what I'm reading it. I can't feed any energy back into the grid. So why am I even connecting to the grid? That's what I'm really just trying to understand this.
Homeowners or business owners who install these systems are looking to leverage the benefits of the grid in terms of system stability. So it's providing them with the ability to maintain voltage and frequency in their home. So the inverter in the home or in the premises is matching up to the system voltage and frequency. So think of the electric system as a giant flywheel. It has a lot of inertia to it. And the power will flow in and out of this giant flywheel to support the home. So there are great benefits to connecting to the grid. If you did not connect to the grid, you'd have to put your power to an inverter directly into your home, and the output of the system might not match the needs of your home at any given moment. So you could see fluctuations in voltage or frequency at home. If you put it into a battery in your own home, it gives you that reserve, if you will, cushion to maintain that. But by connecting to the grid, you negate the need to have your own battery, other than for emergency backup in case the grid were to go down. For example, during an outage, you could carry your home on your battery for some period of time. So there are benefits to connecting to the grid. The concept of net metering was one that was created a number of years ago, decades ago, to allow homeowners to kind of jumpstart the rooftop solar industry, and allow homeowners to do that. So it allows people to overproduce power at, let's say, at 2 o'clock that they're not using, put it into the grid. They're using the grid as a battery. When I say a battery, we're not storing that energy for them at all.
Right.
We're just taking it mathematically and giving it back to them later on. It's a calculus that only exists in halls of Congress, frankly, in state legislatures. It doesn't work in real science. You're actually taking the power, giving it to somebody else, and then making it later on to make up what you took before.
Okay.
So
Okay, Mr. Roy, I mean, you obviously have issues. I mean, we do have to, we have public comment. We just, at some point, we just need to take a vote up or down on it, but
Well,
go ahead.
we don't need to only take an up or down vote. We can also say, hey, look, this might not be quite there yet. So I'd like to make a motion to change what's written here. And specifically, what I'd like to do is I'd like to add in a provision that the power limiting requirements don't apply if the person installing the system also installs an appropriate quantity of battery backup or of battery energy storage. And the reason for that is if you're going to allow them to go for the battery energy storage, then excess that they have goes into the battery, doesn't go into the grid. So you don't need the limiting on that one. I don't think you need the limiting at all because we have the limit in place in the 10 kilowatt size limit on design of the system. It's already there. So you don't need to add this one. I think, so that's part of my motion. The other part of the motion is I would like to add to this a requirement that if we approve it, that we request that Director Liberty does due diligence on a demand response system and getting us ready to do that in anticipation of the changes that are coming in terms of technology, in terms of the tile line, in terms of pricing of systems, so that we're in place to have a smarter grid.
Okay, well, we've got a couple, well, there is a, there's public comment. Madam Clerk, do you have any public comment cards? Madam Clerk?
I do not, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. We do have one public comment card.
I have one, I mean, of course, if we can do something to help somebody, the one person that wants to do this, by all means. And so it's like, what's the harm in passing this? My worry is that some people love like big flashy headlines, Lake Worth just removed their cap on solar, yay. And then all
They
these
did.
people come in and they are expecting to be able to build a system that would be typical if the cap were actually removed. And then we end up with more angry people because they come in thinking we removed the cap.
If somebody could
And they
identify how
come
much
in and
money
they're
we're
like, oh,
talking about.
actually, you want me to have to install solar panels twice
Right.
No.
now?
nobody
Yes,
does that.
yes,
Yeah.
that's what.
To
Director
add,
Lee
to
said.
add.
To add
No-
on,
nobody
it seems
does
more
that.
expensive to me than to like design a project and build a project all in one swoop. So I think if this isn't handled correctly, and that we've seen, we're not the best at public relations in this department, that we could end up with more angry people who are just, really excited because we want to brag about removing a cap, but they don't understand that this is really just a temporary solution. This isn't us removing a cap, and it's not a perfect solution. So if we say, yay, we did this thing, and people go and they hire somebody and put time and energy into designing a system and realize, oh, wow, oops, this isn't what I thought. I'll just wait the 2 years when I can get the system I want all in one swoop. I would hate for those customers who already know they have to wait 2 years to now be more upset.
Okay, let me ask a question for my own clarification. The objection is that the people that if this goes through, the people that are affected are not able to sell their electricity back to the city. Is that what I'm, like, accurate on that?
They can't make a profit as it is, right? They can only produce how much they're gonna use in their home, but they're allowed to overproduce during the day. And then at night, pull that back in. So they're gonna install these solar panels. And then they're still gonna have to pay us for their electricity at night. And because they're not allowed to generate more during the day and then use, do that trade-off with us. So are they building the system now that they're gonna use in 2 years when they're allowed to overproduce during the day and then give it back at night? So do they design that system now for 2 years from now so they don't have to do double the work? Or do they design it now where they don't overproduce at all during the day? But then they have to actually still on top of that continue paying us for their electricity at night. And how does that work during the day? Like when it says does not exceed the electric needs at the time the electricity is produced, when the electricity is produced at different amounts throughout the day.
It's not a practical
This just
approach.
seems very confusing to me of how this is actually going to work and how this is going to.
And it's worth thinking about what is the downside to the electric utility. Let's make an estimate in the next 2 years that maybe 100 people might connect during that period. They're each limited to 10 kilowatts. So times 100, what's that come out to? It would be less than the 1.5% that we are doing now. So it might raise us to 3%. That 3% is not enough to cause problems on the grid.
Which I will ask Mr. Liberty.
And if there are problems, there are real technical issues. I spent a lot of time reading up on the things and I've been aware of some of them before. Mr. Liberty has raised the issue that, we got to be very careful about these solar systems because there's a danger to the lineman that the solar systems, if they're connected and the lineman doesn't know and the line is connected at the electric utility level, but it's still collecting at the solar. And I have to say that if you look in the details of our connection rules and regulations, it refers to UL 1741, Underwriters Lab 1741. That is a requirement that any inverter that's connected automatically senses whether the grid is on or off. And as soon as the grid goes off, it pulls the inverter off the thing. So for Mr. Liberty to be saying that, well, you know, there's a safety concern with these things is simply disingenuous.
Madam Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
flat out falsehood, Commissioner.
No, it's not.
I'll stand here and I'll say flat out falsehood. We have not said this because of safety. We know that the systems will not export. I think you're misinterpreting the concept of an island operation.
I was told the same thing this very day, that was what was reported coming from you, and I've heard it on occasions
Okay,
before.
I
That's
don't,
not-
all right,
The
I
cap
don't
is-
think,
The cap is completely.
Mr. Liberty
unrelated.
has the floor. You had your opportunity.
It's a technical issue, and I know you've done a lot of reading, but I know there's one place you've never been. And that's in the control room during a black start and an island operation. I know you haven't been.
Actually,
I can see the swings on the system, our operators deal with it, and they had to deal with voltage and frequency. That's why the cap was put in place, was to protect the system. Because we shut our own solar system off during island operations because of the swings that could induce on the system. This was a decision that was made, or a recommendation rather, that was made by the operating department to the commission. If the commission wants to reverse that, you're certainly able to do that. If you want to order the operating department to ignore that and leave that system online and remove the caps, you're free to do so. The advice of the operating department was to not do that. The cap that's in place has nothing to do with economics, has nothing to do with safety. We know that these systems will not operate in reverse power because UL doesn't allow them to. However, all linemen work in a manner that assumes that they might, but the cap doesn't have anything to do with that.
I didn't say that the cap did. I said that it has been stated from your office that's concern for linemen with solar systems. That's a separate issue from the.
It is.
But that's not what we're talking- I
It's a
need
blanket concern, but so is speeding on the way to the job, but it has nothing to do with the cap that's in place.
Okay.
It's completely unrelated.
All right, we've had quite a bit of discussion. I have one question for Mr. Liberty. The concept of allowing people to have a battery storage on there for the daytime to keep it, what's your reaction to that?
Not opposed at all to battery storage. We're merely concerned with the ability of more power coming back on the grid from this, either from the battery system or from the solar system into our system. Because it would put more power onto the system beyond what the cap had allowed.
Okay, so someone would have to buy, and I'm like the simplest of, I'm not the expert, as you are. Does that, can you buy a battery big enough to store enough for that day? I mean, can there be a cap on the battery,
Sure, the batteries are readily available. There's a number of customers that have installed them. We have some staff members that actually have them on their own homes.
Okay.
They live in other utility territories. So it's a viable technology that's out there. But I'm really concerned about the discussion about the cap because this was a recommendation by the operating department to be cautious. And we recognize that it's not popular. And frankly, it's become more difficult to sit here and justify it than saying, just overrule it and tell us to go ahead and do it anyway.
raise the cap?
Raise the cap or eliminate it. Frankly, it was our recommendation to maintain stability of the system during an island operation that this cap be in place. But there certainly seems to be a lot of opposition from it, especially from people who haven't been in the control room watching the frequency of the voltage happen during the start. Our recommendation is to leave the cap in place. But if that's not tenable from a policy point of view, remove the cap and we can see how it goes.
What happens if we remove the cap? People would have to be connected to our utility.
Customers would install solar up to 10 kW in the current rules, tier 1, as they wish. If we get into an island operation and it causes a disruption in the system, we could trip a circuit to trip itself on under frequency or voltage.
Because of the solar?
It could. We don't know for 100% that it could do that, but we suspect it could. And it was our.
Please no comments from the audience. If you want to make a public comment, you can fill out a blue card. Please.
Blue card.
We have blue cards in the back if you want to make it, and we're wrapping this up.
Can I ask?
Please, sir.
Director Liberty a question. How often in the last 3 years have we gone island, or 2 years?
The last 2 years, I don't think we've had an island operation. We remain on a single tie line. but we have not had an island operation, unfortunately. Nor do we want to have an island operation. So we
So
do a lot to try to avoid it.
And let me ask another question.
Right.
Is it not true that the industry is moving toward
Okay, you're
communication?
becoming, your questions are border on harassment.
No, they're not.
But this is a private conversation.
It's on accurate information because we have to make decisions that affect our residents. And we need to do that on accurate information. And in the industry, is it not true that it is moving toward communication systems that let you do exactly the concern that you have, that you can remotely remove variable renewable energy sources or inverter-based sources, you can remotely shut them down. And there's a reason for that, because.
Okay, this is,
there are
I'm
valid
sorry, Mr.
concerns.
McVoy, I respectfully have to say
But
that
can we
the-
let-
that the level of what we're going into, I'm sure that you've had opportunities to question Mr. Liberty in private, these same questions. You're not happy with the answers, that's clear. we need
I'm not
to know
happy
something.
with it, with inaccurate answers.
Well, and
That there are different approaches.
I have to say, with all due respect, Mr. McVoy, that you're bordering on accusing the head of our electric utility, who has many years actually doing it, that comes to us, and you're intimating that he's giving us, for whatever reason, inaccurate information.
I do have a suggestion
Okay.
because, you know, we are in a unique situation as owning our own electric utility at it during the time where we're seeing a massive transformation on how energy is produced and stored. I really think we should take one of our utility meetings and make it a workshop meeting where we discuss what is our net metering program like now? Where do we want it to go without the second timeline? And what are we going to do as we see more and more of our customers enroll? Because it will have a financial impact on our city. And I don't think, you know, that the reason we have the cap in place right now is because of the worries about the financial impact. But when I got in office, I was like, well, this cap is here till we get the second timeline. I'll worry later, you know, we'll worry later about how are we going to transition once we get that second timeline. I really think this is a very worthy conversation that everybody on the commission and the public should understand the position that our city is in when it comes to solar and the future and how we're going to plan for a future that is changing the way that energy is produced and stored. So I think I do worry when we have something brought to us that we have to like discuss and vote on all the same night. And it's like, seems like it's part of a bigger conversation. We've known that this is an important topic. And the first I heard about this coming to us was when the agenda was released. So I have a little bit of a process concern here.
Have you had a chance to talk to Mr. Liberty?
No, I haven't.
Well, the agenda came out.
Right, and
Like
we
a
all
week
have
ago.
a million things we're juggling, and I don't think that we should expect every single commissioner to drop every single thing they're doing for every single agenda item to have closed door conversations with staff. I think we should follow a process that is fair and transparent so that, what happens if we approve this next month or not today? You know, like, since the day we got here, we were like being told, you know, you're drinking through a fire hose, and we've been having to make these quick decisions. And we've settled down a lot now, and I would like to see that changed permanently, where we can actually have discussion and and if I talk to Director Liberty by myself, and I don't get to hear what Commissioner Robinson might be asking him, and he might ask a question I never even thought of, and I don't get to hear that response until the day it's brought up here, and then I have to quickly digest it and think of everything and then turn around and vote. I think we need to have a lot of discussions about what solar means for the city.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I just want to just correct a potential misconception. The cap is not related to economics at all.
No, I know.
She said it wasn't.
Okay.
She said it wasn't.
But I also know that there will be an economic impact down the road that we need to prepare for. And if we're saying, oh, but the rooftop solar that takes customers away from us, but we're going to see an increase in electric vehicles and they're going to start charging. Let's have the conversation publicly and like talk about it and be transparent. This is what we're facing. This is what we're dealing with, and we have a plan and we're all in agreement.
I agree 100%. There is an economic impact to the city. There is one today. Is it a huge one? No, but It could be greater, I say it will be greater in the future because
Right.
customers are going to continue to avail themselves of it.
Right.
But the state law is that net metering is allowed, and we're certainly going to follow state law.
Yeah, I just want to lay it all on the table and then we get to figure out what we're doing.
So also to address Commissioner McBoy's, I know your frustration. We've talked about this offline, we've talked about it now. There are technologies out there. The reality of the situation here is that we put the cap in place at the time when we needed a second tile and we still need that second tile in. This operating department is scrambling every day to keep the system going. We have millions of dollars of system improvement projects underway right now to rebuild the system. Could we install a communication system to be able to talk to customer systems? Yes. We're having trouble keeping up with what we have to do today, just to keep the power on today, let alone adding more things. Will our grid, are the designs that we're implementing allow us to be done in the future? Absolutely. We envision this as a grid of the future. The grid of the future will have bilateral communications with customer devices. There's no question about it. But fundamental to that is the grid has to be able to stand up and not fall down of its own weight, which is the problem we have today. We're rebuilding the infrastructure. We have infrastructure that's 50 and 60, 70 years old that we deal with every day, just trying to keep the power on. The contingencies, the planning that we do every day, just to make sure the power stays on the next hour, the next day, the next week, this coming summer. So add something on now, say, okay, now we want to install a communication system that can talk to a handful, 50, 60, 100, 200 solar systems and do it quickly. While we're trying to juggle, absolutely, we should do that.
But you're planning for the future, that's going to be part of the
We're
system.
not saying no to these things. These are all things that we want to do. But right now we have a fundamental problem of where is staff going to focus? Are we going to rebuild the system while not cutting off the opportunity to do these other things in the future? Absolutely. We installed a new SCADA system, which in part will allow us to do that. We have an AMI system, which while not working great, does allow us some capability to do these types of things. We're not saying no to this technology. We're saying, how much can we do in a very short period of time where we're dealing with such major issues right now of system reliability, which we're trying to fix.
And we're not that far apart.
We're pretty close, closer than most people would think by listening to that.
We get a little
We
heated
actually
up,
do.
but I would only say that I do see other utilities that have the same issues of older infrastructure and, you know, maybe they let some things go or whatever. And yet I see them being on top of these things. And the communication stuff it's not a huge deal. A lot of it is going on the same lines that already exist. The technology at the solar end, at the inverter ends, has already been required at a national level. Energy demand response stuff has been on the Department of Energy's website for a decade and a half.
Madam
So-
Mayor, my hand has been up and I have been waiting patiently.
Yes, please.
I mean, I hate to say this, but I feel it's been talked to death by several people on
And
the
we're about
dais.
to wrap it up.
As far as, you know, I feel that we asked staff to give us the agenda when we asked for the agenda. We've had plenty of time to do research. We've had plenty of time to form an opinion and vote one way or another. I mean, we can't keep, the rules simply say that if we've discussed something more than 30 minutes, it goes to workshop. We've already passed that. So, I mean, I'm just ready for someone to make a motion and move forward. I've done my research. I know how I feel. I feel that, you know, Mr. Liberty has answered the questions over and over again, 16 different ways. And I feel like we just should move this forward.
I did make a motion, by the way.
Well, you made a motion to add some language to the document. And I'm not arguing with you. I'm saying, well, you did not say exactly what language that was.
Okay, would you like me to tune it up better?
We have one public comment. So let's have a public comment before we go. Mr. Diaz?
Yeah.
Thank you. I can appreciate having this conversation because rooftop solar is very clearly a huge opportunity for this city. Lake Worth Beach, largely small houses, a lot of very environmentally conscious people. And you know, that small house living in those cottages we all know and love, it just lends itself to reaching that coveted net negative. So this is like really important conversation and it's great to hear it go on. But like Commissioner Stokes and Commissioner McBoy pointed out, it's a little bit disappointing to see the amendment proposed, because as I read through it and I interpreted it, I look at it as it's gonna dissuade people from doing the right thing, making the choice, right? And most people who go into solar, like, friends of mine and people who are in the environmental community, they're not looking to make a profit. They're not looking, it's not a money-making thing. It's not a braggadocio thing. It's like they're doing it because they want to be environmentally friendly and they don't want to be saddled with massive financial burden. And this amendment, there's a reason why PEL devices aren't industry standard. Technology is there and demand response, battery technology is pretty much right there in terms of being physically small and really effective. So there's a lot of things incentivizing right now for people to take on these projects for their homes. But something I want to highlight and something to put on your radar is right now in Tallahassee, FPL is trying to push through a bill. I believe they call it the green energy or renewable energy generation. It's SB 1024. This bill is a huge problem. And this bill really falls in line with a number of bills that have been happening for the last decade or so, which is the attack on home rule and the Tallahassee's attempt at stripping local governments of their own power. This bill that's about to pass is really going to dissuade people from putting in rooftop solar. And I think this town, or this commission, is in a good place to do better. This amendment isn't really it. I think we need to prioritize getting us faster to removing that cap. We need to explore and encourage those technologies that are going to get us there. We need to, shore up our infrastructure, make it more resilient, but also I would love to see the city kind of stand up to these kinds of attacks on home rule, challenge these.
Sorry, your
rules
time is up.
If and when they pass.
And we'll be in Tallahassee very shortly, talking to legislators about all the things that are attacking us. So, Commissioner Roy, you are looking for some language change.
Yes, so the language change that I would put in would be in two places.
I think and I'm a little bit of a loss because we really don't, it's not like an ordinance or a resolution. It's,
It's a resolution.
well, it is a resolution. I wonder if we should vote on what is presented to us first. And if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, we can do the second. We can try.
I think when a motion.
I'm looking for the attorney.
So if we went by Robert's Rules of Order, and Roy, he made a motion, it wasn't seconded, so technically your motion died. So you could make a new motion and then it would be subject to being seconded. That would be your technical.
So we wouldn't have to go first on the resolution. We could,
No,
okay, I just want to make sure.
What's highlighted, the actual interconnection rules
Mhm.
were adopted by resolution. So in order to change them, we have to bring back a new resolution to make this change,
Which is this resolution.
which is the highlighted portion. That's the only change to the
Right.
existing one.
Right. Okay, so what is the language that you're looking for, Commissioner Roy?
Two pieces. It is in page 3 of the rules and regulations. In section 5, the highlighted in yellow section. Sorry, here. Bigger screen. In the sentence, the first sentence of the highlighted one, the foregoing 1.5% limited shall not apply to, and then it would insert after to, systems which include sufficiently sized battery energy storage systems, BSS,
Right, slow down,
or
slow down. So systems which include,
sufficiently
the clerk has to get this as well. Systems which include,
sufficiently sized battery energy storage systems, which are abbreviated BESS, or, and then would continue on to what's there, or if the new system to be interconnected, blah, 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 goes on to the PL part. So that's the one change. Got that?
Yeah.
Okay, and the other would be within the resolution itself. I guess I would defer to the attorney where to put it, but I would say section 2.5. The electric utility department shall pursue due diligence of demand response systems as an alternative means of addressing the technical concerns.
Couldn't we do that as a consensus, as a separate item? That seems not quite on point with what we're doing here. I don't disagree with you, but I think procedurally, I think what I'm hearing you say is that you want to direct staff to look at something, right?
It does feel out of place here. This
Yeah.
is like very
Yeah, it's
specific to the
beyond-
program.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with you, but I think it's
Does.
beyond this resolution. I think that would be a subject for another day.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Liberty, with regards to adding language systems which include sufficient sized battery, emergency,
Energy.
energy, can't read my writing, storage systems, and then your language. What's your response to that?
Madam Mayor, not opposed in concept. The problem I have is how do we define
Sufficient.
sufficiently
That was my
sized?
question.
So how does staff look at a system and say it's sufficiently sized? Because you'll have a homeowner, the contractor, and then utility saying, what did we mean by sufficiently
Right,
sized?
that was gonna be my
So,
comment.
I think I know the intent, but we need to put some bounds around that, just so we know what to do.
Mhm.
And with regards to demand response, certainly that's something that we could study and should study. I'm not saying that we should not.
You're doing that anyway, right, with the
Well,
whole solar?
We talked about it, but we have not specifically engaged a demand response study.
Okay.
We know that demand response systems are expensive, and they need to be paid for somehow, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't at least look at it. We know other utilities that do it. It is a useful tool. At the moment, our operators are not saying, I wish I had a demand response system. We're not encountering the operating issues with the demand response system, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be more aware of the technology.
Okay, so you agree to that. So that was my question. When you use words which are conclusory, like sufficient or enough or
Right.
should,
If you just give us some help on that, otherwise we have something that we really can't manage to.
do you have any suggestions? I mean, is there, if you have this solar system, then you need this much battery? There's no like correlating.
No, we're concerned about the power that flows back to our system, where it goes before it gets to our system.
You don't care.
We don't care.
Right,
We're just concerned about it coming back to the system.
exactly.
So if this device could be, if the language could be worded in such a way that there is, regardless of what you have behind the meter, that there's no export greater
Mhm.
than the home's needs,
And
that would be fine. That would solve it.
And I think that I understand the concern. It's a little bit hard to know what your excess is. I think what I would suggest is maybe, I hear the concern about sufficiently sized. It's obviously squishy. I think it's possible to work with that under the understanding that, look, if somebody puts the battery system in, are there going to be occasions where they kick a kilowatt into the system? Are we going to have a big problem with that? Even if you had, I don't think so.
No,
So it doesn't have to be precise.
Right, the PELs, for example, control within a few cycles or a few seconds. It's.
Yeah, they're very quick and they're
Yeah.
a flat out cutoff.
Right.
But what they're doing is they're burning up all that extra juice coming off your panels into heat. Whereas this says, look, if you want to go a step further and put it into batteries, so you can actually use it later, that's a wiser use of that renewable
I'm
energy.
not a design engineer, but there may be a way to leave the language as it is, where they have a battery, the battery's absorbing it.
That's what it does.
The PEL is still. in
Can you,
place.
okay, can your system tell if it's not working, if a battery, if they're shooting energy back? Because then we'll know it's not sufficient.
Through the AMI system, we could.
Because I can see people, when I buy something, I try to not spend as much money as I have to. So I'm again, not Mr. Liberty. If you buy a battery that's too small because it's cheaper, so it's going to defeat the purpose anyway. But if the city can tell that it's not working, that it's insufficient, then
We have
But no one
some
would-
recourse at that point. Also, battery systems, they're expensive and they don't come in, infinitely graded different sizes. They're basically big chunks at a time.
Right.
And so people, if somebody's gonna bother to put a battery system in, they're gonna put a reasonable sized one because it's a benefit to them. So,
I like an optimistic. Yeah.
well, if you're thinking in the mentality of spending the money to do this, and you don't really, like I say, they don't come in infinitely graded sizes. They come in chunks and you either buy
Right.
one chunk or
Right.
two,
I understand that.
and one's gonna get you close enough.
But if they buy one and they need two, what could we do? Let's just say if that happens, if we find that we are getting energy back from a system, from a solar system and it's not supposed to, what recourse would we have?
Could either ask them to double their battery, put another.
And they say, no, I have a battery.
Or ask them to wire in a PD, one of these power limiting
Right, okay,
devices. such
so that would be the
we would not
recourse
have-
then.
Right.
That
And
would-
I think if this becomes a major issue, we would come back to you for guidance. We're hoping that we're past this issue when the second
Mhm.
timeline comes in, or if by policy, the commission decides to lift the cap completely. Again, I do want to emphasize that this is, for us, this is not about economics. This is about system integrity. And it would be, when I first got here, island operations were rather frequent, unfortunately. They've become fortunately, rather infrequent. And we want to keep it that way, right? So this was something we felt we needed to have
Okay.
to protect this.
But I think we found a resolution. I think that we have, because the interest of the city is not to get energy back, but we don't really care where it goes. It could go into a paper bag for all we care, but the device is one way of preventing that, and having sufficient storage would be another way. So,
And I
And
think,
technically, we have one customer waiting for approval.
Yeah.
Now, that's this device, and maybe, and we don't know how many others.
it's gonna be interesting to see how many people in the city actually do invest the kind of money for solar. I mean, I hope it all works out. So are you comfortable with that amendment?
Yes.
Okay, do I have a motion? Well, we have a motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you guys for working together without throwing stuff at each other.
Can I just ask, please, if a customer comes in.
Oh, wait,
and
yeah.
is
No, go ahead.
like under the impression that the staff has a very well prepared response. Because I'm not looking forward to the first Facebook post about how we're making our net metering program worse. And I
Yeah, I
can
don't
see it
see
happen.
that.
You don't see
I
that.
see people saying that, but I don't see that it being.
Let's try to get out ahead of it and make sure that if somebody comes in and they think that the cap has been lifted and they're going to enjoy the same exact thing that everybody prior has, and that they walk away knowing this is not permanent, that this is just a temporary thing that's in place. This is not the future.
It's a step forward.
Right, but we see it happen every day, right? Let's be
Listen,
prepared for it.
People
That's all
will
I'm
be
saying.
critical of the electric utility if we got it directly from the sun.
But let's not make it easy for them.
I have no problem with
In this
that.
case, I
trust me.
think we've been trampled here by our own good intentions. We wanted to get out in front of it,
Yeah.
saying, this technology's out there.
Right.
Let's get out there ahead of it and approve it.
But it's just a temporary,
Exactly.
this
So
is not the future of our program.
what typically happens is customers will retain an installer, and then they'll contact us, and then we'll have a discussion with them about the size of their system, because we have to check the size of their system. At that point, we can determine whether they have one of these devices or not. By the way, do you have one of these devices? The contractor community is not a huge one. There's probably 6 to 12 or so installers in the area, and they're very, very bright, very good people, and they'll know these rules, and we talk with them when they come in with their applications. So we'll clarify that. But for the public that's listening, this is not a long-term fix. We never envisioned it as that. But when one customer came forward with this, we said, well, let's at least open the door, because there may be others.
So, thank you. And obviously a lot of work goes into this and I very much appreciate it.
I still think we need a workshop on.
At some point,
future
yes,
solar,
we've got so many workshops, we've got
Okay.
ARPA, so let's, I mean, we are working towards the bigger solar picture anyway.
did we have any other public comment on this one?
No,
No,
those are the to me. So before we adjourn, any words of wisdom from anybody? No, we're all out of it.
Perception,
What?
perception,
Oh, no, I absolutely understand that, but I do think that, I mean, in terms of getting towards renewable energy, this is definitely a step for the right direction. And I still would like to know what people, you know, if there's a figure of how much people think they're actually going to be able to sell to the electric company, that I would like to know that, because we're talking about losing, owners losing money. How much? Is it $10 a month? Is it, you know, that sort of thing I'd
Yeah.
like to know. Because we could, if it's not a lot, we could be
Let
making.
me add some clarity. I don't think the owners are losing money. They may not be making as much money as they expect.
Right, that's what I meant.
But they're certainly not losing money. The tax benefits are there, and they're displacing electric that
Oh, that's
bought at 10 or 11 cents, and the payback may be a little bit longer, but I don't think they're necessarily losing money on the investment.
And
And I'd also say that there's the possibility that there are some buyers that may perceive that a home that has solar may be worth more than one that is not. So there may be a value appreciation of the property. I'm speculating. I'm not an expert in that area. We do have some other items that I could just give you a heads up on update.
want to take a minute and have that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
The first one was the bill redesign. You should have all gotten an email with a mock-up, what we call a mock-up of the new bill, what that looked like.
Yes,
I know
yes, yes.
Commissioner Boyd and I had a conversation about that. We needed your comments back really quickly because that information is actually off the new bill printing company
Mhm.
to begin doing the mock-up. In parallel with that, we're also working to build the matrix or the coding, if you will. So the information that comes out of our billing system will interface with what the bill printer can receive. So everything falls into the right boxes,
That's
if you will,
good.
on the bill. That bill, for the public that's listening, will be 4 pages to it. The first page will have a summary of their electric and water and sewer bill. The second page will be the water bill, which will be the back of the first page. So it's actually 2 pieces of paper printed both sides.
Mhm.
So the second page, which is the back of the first page, will have the detail of the water bill. The third page, which is the front of the second sheet of paper, will have the detail of the electric bill. And then the fourth page will be citywide messages
Right.
that are related to festivals or special
Yeah.
events, commemorations of holidays, things like that. So
So,
those will be the 4 things. We do plan, not in the first print run, but we do plan to make the bill available in up to 3 languages. So customers would have the ability to select the language in which they want to receive their bill. The first page of the bill will also have some boxes where the content can change with additional monthly messaging if we choose to. The first page of the bill will have a tear off at the bottom, so they can go to the Pay Near Me locations that they're paying in cash because it has the barcode
Mhm.
that they would need for that, those types of things. So that is underway. There may be some suggestions on the size of the fonts and things like that. We don't want to make huge changes right now because we really want to get this first bill print out the door, and then we can tweak it as we go. If there's things that you want to see changed now, suggestions on font or color, those are minor changes. But I don't want to re-engineer the whole bill at this point. That would be very difficult to make an equal to 1 deadline. But that work is on.
oh, okay, that's the deadline.
That's the deadline. We actually want to be issuing as of April 1,
Okay,
the bills with the new printing company.
so we should get back to you at the end of the month,
We're
which is very soon,
hoping to
weirdly.
have the comments by Monday of last
Okay.
week, but
Well, that's, my last
please
month,
hurry up.
Yeah.
And take a look at the module.
Okay.
sure.
Just to let you know. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Malega, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I had given my recommendations to the city manager this morning, and one of them was on font. And I think that font needs to be enlarged, that's under the graph of the second page to equal the font that's on the right side, because it's imperative information and it's something that we want people to be able to read. And that was the one that said this month, last month, and last year.
Okay, and the city manager has that?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Anything else? You sort of out in the ether tonight.
That's it.
Okay, thanks. Our best wishes to Dawn. Hope she's feeling better.
Thank you. I'm actually in the car. I'm ready to get her prescription. So thank you.
There you go. Madam City
I was
Manager.
just gonna mention that I have been connecting with each of you to get your comments regarding the mock-up bill. And so, I've been sharing some of those with, Mr. Liberty. I think we may be 1 or 2 that just waiting to get your feedback. Thank you.
Okay, anything else from anybody that want to talk about in public? We get so few opportunities.
Other items.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
We are still working on the conservation program, which we're asked to work on. The Electric Utility Advisory Board put probably, I guess, at least 4, maybe 5 meetings They haven't met in the last month because of the holiday schedule, but I know that Chairman Ryan O'Lander is summarizing the comments, their suggestions, and the plan is to bring that forward. I believe at the February meeting if possible, or certainly March meeting, one of those two get it come forward. I prefer that they, as an advisory board, bring their suggestions forward and what they'd like to see in the program. But they were making good progress on that, looking at what other utilities were doing, looking at some of the best practices, looking at issues such as should we take it all on ourselves, should we contract portions of it, what types of things do we want to do? Is there some breakpoint in expense? For example, what can we do with as little money as possible? What might be more expensive? I don't believe that anything's been ruled out right now, but they're coming up with an overview of what programs could look like. The other item is solar, community solar RFP. That's probably about 90 to 95% complete. We got pretty well through a draft before I left on vacation. I know I received a reminder today now that I'm back from vacation, I said, remind me again to take a look at it. So we do plan to bring that forward. That's coming along. There is an RFP in development at FMPA for FMPA Solar 3, which will include battery storage. And it's our intention to give a nod that we'd be interested in taking some power from that. Battery storage would be important because we're pretty much, actually more than pretty much, we're fully subscribed right now for what we call the shoulder months. We've got more power coming to us than in some hours of the day than we actually need. So to take on even more solar without the storage component would be problematic because we'd have to start selling off solar that we bought or finding a place where they don't have a load for. So most people don't realize that we really didn't max out with the 36.5 megawatt commitment in FMPA Solar 1, Solar 2. We looked at our forward growth projections, and which are largely coming true in terms of new meter installs. They'll be EVN, the mid, hopefully the hotel, Gulfstream one day. So that's coming along well, but we need to be mindful that we can't add a lot more solar unless we're going to be selling that solar in the market because we just don't have a load for it. We don't have a customer for it. But we will express interest anyway. There's battery storage. The key to it is battery storage. And so there's a lot of discussion about battery storage, and that is the future of the electric utility industry. So we, by design, subscribe to solar that we could get our carbon footprint as low as possible without having to go to batteries. In order to take the next jump, taking that carbon footprint even lower, batteries are going to have to be a part of the solution. We just can't keep buying more solar if we don't have a place to use it, right? So you have to be able to store it to use it later in the day and at night. During the summer months and the fall months, we have enough daytime load to absorb it. But there's probably going to be about a 5-month period of time during the year when we'll have hours during the day, when we'll have more solar than we can use. So we'll have to find other markets for it and then grow into it over time. The timeline, we talked a little bit about the timeline. Timeline was now looking like December of 23 as opposed to December of 22 in terms of its operational date. Has to do with issues on the FPL side. They are moving along diligently in good faith. The relationship is very good. We're moving along on our side. We're looking at common engineering team for certain portions of the project. It's coming along well. And then what we'll also be discussing next month is the capital plan. I know that in the original budget, we had talked about a number of about $44 million of capital for the electric utility. This was about 5 months ago. Remember that? It seems like a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
Maybe 6 months ago. Actually, it's probably more like 4 months ago when we approved the budgets. So we refined that number. That number will be a little bit lower for the electric utility, which will include our capital needs and the next phase of system hardening and reliability improvement, the SHRIP program. So we'll be bringing you a presentation on reliability, and we'll be bringing you a presentation of projects that we would propose to include in the next round of bond funding.
Are you gonna ask us to vote on it the same time?
No.
Thank you.
No, something like that. It would be discussion only.
All right.
You have time to think about it. But we have pared it back to be projects that we think are absolutely critical to undertake in the next 2-year tranche. We're looking closely at when the money that we've already borrowed will be committed and fully promised to projects. And then what's the next wave of projects that we do? So that'll be projects down on 6th Avenue substation, and then the 12th Avenue South substation, and 15th Avenue South. And then we'll have to come back at a later time, probably 1 to 2 years later, talk about what we do up north, 11th and 18th, those stations up there. So there is a plan. The wheels are in motion to put all of these pieces together to turn the system around. I can't understate the need to rebuild the infrastructure. We have a lot of dreams, a lot of aspirations, and they're good dreams, things that we should do. But you've all inherited a system that was neglected for many, many years and not invested in. And that bill is coming due today in terms of the physical condition of the equipment. And that's what our system operators and our line workers and engineers deal with every day, the workarounds. How do we keep this system running day to day with this aging infrastructure?
Years of delayed maintenance,
Years of delayed maintenance, deferred
upgrading.
We saw it happen in Texas, right?
Yeah.
Not too, yeah, it's so important that we have a good grid.
The Texas comment is a good one. That was not exactly related to the grid. That was related to generation resources,
Oh, it was?
to the power infrastructure. Texas had relied very heavily on renewables. Not that that's a problem, but you also have to be able to back up the renewables. So that if the wind is not blowing and the sun is not shining, wind and solar are not going to help you. That happened in an extreme cold spell. So gas was in high demand for home heating, and the gas pipeline system experienced problems because of the cold, and the power plants experienced problems. So either they could not get enough fuel to the power plant, or the power plant did not run properly because it was so cold, or did not run at all. And they got into a spiral in the wrong direction. We actually felt the impact of that because it spiked gas prices in the marketplace. So in February of 2021, we saw a cost spike because gas prices went up for us. I should mention that we know we have a cold snap coming. Our operating department has been test running units. They're focusing on making sure that the engine compartments and the engine stay at a temperature where we're more likely to have a successful start if we need to. We're testing our oil systems in case we need to. We looked at the weather forecast for this coming week. We saw some nights when it looks like it's going to get below 50.
Below 50, freezing,
handle it.
frigid.
We are doing what we can.
I have my heat on.
Right, test on our equipment.
I'm a good
to make
customer.
sure that we're ready to go. But it is old equipment, but we do test runs, and the operating staff in that plant does a fantastic job of keeping that old stuff ready to go.
And it's like there are these invisible people, that
Yeah.
work
They
behind.
do, they do very hard work. They don't.
Thank you, all of you out there.
I'm sure they appreciate it. They don't always get recognized with fun,
They
but
don't.
we do to keep that stuff.
And they sure get criticized.
They do.
Thank you. Anything else?
Really appreciate it.
No, I think.
What about the Port St. Lucie refinancing? Are we good? Are we looking good there?
The St. Lucie project refinancing is underway under FMPA. That's going to bring us some significant savings. $2+ million a year in lower operating costs, which were factored into our economics already when you saw the Stantec models.
Right, did they review us and did all that get straightened out?
We had
Sort of
some,
thing?
we had lengthy meetings
Okay.
with Fitch, the rating agency.
Yeah,
They did not take further action
Okay.
at that point, although we have a mutual understanding that we will continue to have discussions. So it's a
Keep an eye.
continuing evaluation of Lake Worth Beach financials with regards to that credit rating.
Great, thank you, thank you. I just have two real quick things. I just want for folks to know that out there that may be listening, the Gulfstream Hotel submitted their permit applications yesterday. So things are moving forward. We're very excited about that. And I had the privilege and honor of being at the national, and I'll talk about it more at a regular meeting, but the National Mayor's Conference in Washington, DC, and it was amazing. The speakers that spoke were the Secretary of Labor, Transportation, Homeland Security, Nancy Pelosi, Kevin McCarthy, and President Biden. I mean, it was quite interesting, but one thing I took back from it, and what I've got to distill now for us, because I think if any of us go to a conference, we should come back with a product. With this is what I learned as best as you can. A lot of it's very vague, but the message is pretty clear that the feds want to give us money. They really, President Biden likes municipalities. He likes small government. He's got 4 mayors on his cabinet. So sadly, I mean, I was looking today at some of the things that they were talking about, and the deadline, the application deadline is like February 10th. And when we came into office, no information was given to me about what was possible. So we missed a year. So I'm writing to them now saying, what's next? What can we do next? So I'm going to be coming with a little report and some photographs and a list of, we got to get asking for money.
yeah.
We got to, there's federal money, there's a lot of money. So I want to get it for us. So, but it was a very bad, I really appreciate the opportunity to go.
Thanks for representing us.
Yeah, it was really, I mean, I have to say, I made friends with other mayors.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was
It's like
really,
going to camp.
it was really, it was like, and it was, if anybody says, oh, she got to go to Washington, yeah, it was like 20 degrees. I didn't leave the hotel. I left the hotel one time to walk across the street to a restaurant. And that was it. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate it. And I will be back to you. But I think that's a good kind of loose policy for us. If we do get to go on something, at least not just I went to go, but this is what I learned. So
It's a good idea. Thank you.
yeah, no, I think we need to, you know, the taxpayers pay our trips, and I think that they should.
Does that money have to flow through Tallahassee?
No, not all of it.
Good.
They kept making comments about, we're giving this to you directly. There's a good jobs initiative, there's affordable, I mean, really. And I was interested to learn that quite a few cities have already spent a lot of their ARPA money on very varied things. And I think it's really imperative. We're going to have our visioning session, and ARPA is going to be kind of tied in with. Do we have, are those scheduled yet?
We sent the tentative time April, so
Oh.
we want to confirm that and let us know that date lines up with your schedule.
For us to have really that late? That,
April 7th.
okay, okay, all right.
Well, February's already booked.
I know that's, but then there's March. I know.
I
It's,
know.
can you believe it's January 25th? Or whatever day it is. I mean, it's just like,
Yes,
I keep,
it is.
thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen out there, for listening, and our staff for doing such good things for us. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.